Yeah, yeah. All right, there we go. We're recording now. Pastor, hey, Pastor Aaron, welcome. Thanks for joining the video today. It's good to
Glad to
have
be
you here.
here.
And of course, today we've already mentioned this to each other, but we are talking about those quarantine blues because it's day 6 billion of quarantine land, and that's not fun for pretty much anybody. But some people are really struggling with feeling down, even some full-on depression, and we know people are dealing with that. And so I really appreciate you jumping on this call with me today so we can talk about it and share that with people and hopefully give some solutions out there to people who are struggling with that. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to get us started?
Yeah, so my name is Aaron Mudge, and I'm a pastor at Calvary Baptist Church in Huron, South Dakota. I've been an assistant pastor for about 8+ years under my senior pastor, which was Pastor Bill Holmes. And
Mhm.
now that he's retired, I've been the senior pastor for about 1.5 to 2 years. And
And you're
how
doing
about
a
you,
great job.
John? You tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm a student in grad school right now studying psychology. Specifically, applied behavior analysis is my field, and I'm working as a frontline practitioner in that field right now, and training to be a clinician and working towards national certification. So it's been pretty cool to do that, and it's been really awesome to see how the science that we find through natural revelation fits so well with the divine revelation of God's word. and
Absolutely.
and it's so awesome to see that. And I know you and I have been talking for a long time about how to use the natural revelation and the divine revelation to understand how we can best live and act in the world. And so right now, in a time where everyone's feeling terrible, or okay, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people are genuinely feeling really terrible because of lockdowns and shutdowns and maybe fear over virus stuff, or just can't leave my home and what do I do. There's some help to be found here in God's word, and with also the natural revelation that perfectly corroborates God's word, of course. And we were talking about this before, but it's like 20% on a normal conditions. 20% of the population has depression, like straight out, like you can diagnose it depression. And then right now you got to imagine that's way up because of all this
Yeah,
stuff going on.
it's got to be.
Oh
People
yeah.
that maybe don't even normally struggle with depression, I would think that they probably are right now. There's nothing to
Yeah.
do.
And
A lot of people don't have jobs, and what's going to happen after this?
right. And even if it's not like a full on depression, it's still like that feeling of everything is and you just want to sit there and do nothing and you feel miserable. um, and that makes total sense. And I should say, since we're going to be talking about some things that might be considered medical advice, we're not giving any medical advice. If
No.
you need if you,
Nope,
uh,
nope, nope.
Aaron, my stats here on this from Sims et al. In 2011 says that it's the 21.6% of the population on any given time is dealing with depression. From that, about 6.5% of those who have it do actually need medicine and treatment from a professional. If this is you, go get it from a professional. We're talking more about how somebody who's not clinically depressed but is still dealing with some of those feelings can look to God's word.
Yeah, and let me just say right now that there's this stigma in churches and amongst Christians
Oh
that
yeah.
if depression, oh, you're depressed, you just need to be happy, and
Hmm.
and depression is just, you're just sinning, so
Right.
just stop, just be joyful, and that we
Yeah.
want to deal with that because that's not exactly how it works. But
Right.
also, there
Go ahead.
are people that genuinely have a medical chemical imbalance in their brain.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, for sure.
for those that are watching, my background, I have a bachelor's degree in biology, and so I'm also passionate about the Bible, but I'm passionate about biology and science, and
Hmm.
understand that there can be very much a medical issue. So, as a pastor, I just want to say, if you've been dealing with this and you're doing everything right in the spiritually, you're following godly advice and doing what God says, and it's still not helping, maybe it's time to seek medical advice from a medical professional. And I know there's a huge stigma about taking medicine, but if you're
And
sick,
in some
medicine.
cases, Aaron, they had in this study that I've been talking about, I think it what was it? Might have been four. Okay, I didn't have this one down in my notes for the discussion, but I think it's about 14%, and we can look it up later if we need to, that was able to get treatment without medicine. Or,
Yeah.
and I'm sure too, I know it wasn't in the study, but I know from my research and other things that alternatives to like the hard psychotropics are totally out there for people that need it. But also, I just want to add too, to continue what you're saying, depression doesn't necessarily mean it's a spiritual failure. It's possible that it's an intentional design feature of human psychology. Like God made us.
Yeah, you were talking about that.
Yeah, this
Tell
is
me more
really
about
interesting
that.
concept. So the way I like to talk about it, if you can imagine you are on a desert island, like you're shipwrecked and you crashed on a desert island. Like, what's the first thing you gotta do? Like, what do you gotta
So you
do?
get food and water and
Right, and
right
shelter, and you've got to like
shelter.
build
You're
that and
safe,
collect the
and
firewood and kill the snake and eat its guts. What, you know, I don't want to get gross, but you know what I mean. You're gonna have to survive, right? But what happens once you get all of those survival needs met, and you have the wood stacked up, and you have the food prepared, and you're all good? Like, what's your best strategy at that point? Because you can't get off the island, right? Your best strategy at that point is to what, Aaron?
rest and
Yeah, exactly. Do
conserve
nothing.
energy.
Just conserve energy,
Right?
because there's
You don't
nothing
want to
else
be.
you can do to better your situation at that point.
That's right. And the more things you do, the more energy you waste, and
Right.
then you have to consume more food, which means you have to spend more time gathering food.
So it's a bad survival strategy to keep going. And so the theory out there basically is that when you have all your survival needs met, that your brain kicks in, okay, you're good, shut down. And the that works for survival on an island, but if you're here in 2020 and like the most prosperous nation ever, and all of your needs are met all the time because you don't have survival needs anymore, well, that trigger can still kick in and say, hey, shut down, even though that's not realistically the thing that is best for you at that moment.
Yeah, and as you know, as ones that believe in God and believe in God as the creator,
Mm-hmm.
it would make sense that God would create us with that kind of
Oh, yeah.
defense mechanism,
Yeah,
if
exactly.
you will, just like He's created us with a fight or flight defense
Mm-hmm.
strategy.
Right.
You know, something happens and your adrenaline kicks in, and either you fight or you run, and so there is definitely a physiological component to this.
Yeah, for sure. And also the psychological component makes sense too, because if you think, Aaron, think that same guy on the island, right? He's got all his needs met. What if he suddenly somehow finds out that there's a ship coming by? Like, where's that depression he's feeling go? It's gone, right? Because
Right,
I've got
right,
a thing I need to do and I got to do it right now, and boom, he's going, right? Because he has a purpose, something to work towards, even though the
right. He
only
knows the
change.
ship's coming, so now he needs to build a fire so
Exactly.
that he gets a signal
Exactly.
out.
He's got to like stoke that fire, burn something that causes a bunch of smoke. You gotta get that going, because now he has a new purpose. And that's kind of how depression can work. Or not even if it's full-blown depression, because it's not everyone is a depression case. But even if you're feeling like that shut down, like, oh, I just don't feel like doing anything, maybe I'll just eat a bunch of cookies.
Right, and just real quick, just when we say depression, a lot of people have this idea that depression means that you're just sad.
Right.
There's
Yeah,
way
it's totally
more
different
to
than
it
that.
than that. It's not just
Oh
sad.
yeah.
No energy. There's no motivation to do things that would normally excite you. Nothing excites
Right.
you anymore. And some of that, as we said, can be medical, but some of that can be triggered by other things. And it's just like any other response. Sometimes we think of, well, if your depression is a sin, well, depression itself isn't necessarily a sin. You know, just like the Bible says, be angry and sin not.
Mm-hmm.
To get angry, anger isn't a sin. It's a normal human
Right.
emotion.
We'd
It's
say
what
it's
we
probably a reflexive internal
right.
action. It's like a
It's not
reflex that your brain's reacting to some sort of stimulus in the environment that's saying, whoa, you need to react to this. And so it goes there without you think. Just like if you smell steak that you really like and your mouth waters, that's like a physical external
right.
reaction.
Well, I mean, just like I don't know about you, but like I like to do some woodworking, and if I hit
Mhm.
my thumb with a hammer, instantly I'm angry. It's not like I have a
Right.
choice. I'm angry.
Right. That's not a
The
choice that you
question
make.
is, right, the choice comes with what do you do next? Do you
Right.
scream and throw things? Do you cuss and swear? What
Yeah. Yeah.
what do you
Exactly.
do? Do you throw the hammer? So it's the same
All
with
three.
some of these things we're talking about with depression is it comes down to how do you handle it and what do you do with
Right.
it? What's your choice
Yeah.
of how to
And
handle it and
Aaron,
overcome it?
I think right now we have a lot of people who are feeling at least, if not depressed, at least down.
Right.
I think we could say that.
Sure.
And they're coping with it using a hedonistic philosophy, which is probably too big a word to use. But
Explain that. Hedonistic.
basically, the idea is that, well, I'm down, so what I need to do is something that feels good to make me feel better. So I'm
Right.
going to eat the
Right.
cookies. I'm going to go watch all the movies on whatever your favorite streaming service
Sure.
is. I'm going to go do all this stuff. This feels good, so I'm going to do these things that feel good to make me stop feeling bad.
And the
And
problem is you're not going to find meaning and purpose there.
right,
And I know I mean look
and
at me. I
well,
like to eat.
ultimately,
So
it's Solomon in Ecclesiastes, which I know you're going to get to in your portion here, but uh, those good feelings don't actually solve the underlying problem, and they don't make that feeling of being kind of down go away. They
no, it
might
just
relieve it
masks it.
temporarily. Yeah, masks it. That's a good word for it.
Yep.
So they might mask it for a little bit, but they don't solve the problem, and then you just end up needing to eat more and more cookies until you know you die.
Right.
Hopefully not, though. Come on. But yeah, the hedonistic strategies, those self-gratifying, pleasing my flesh. I don't know. That's might be
Which
too
would be
strong.
kind of the world, if it feels good, do it kind of.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to feel good, and that's how I solve my problems of having this down feeling. It doesn't work, and it doesn't help, and you
No.
just get fat on your couch and wait for the end to
And
come.
then you feel worse because you're fat.
Right, right. Or you feel worse because at the end of the day, you're like, all I did today was sit on my couch and eat cookies and watch Netflix. I did nothing,
And
and I
not
wasted
saying
my
that
life.
you
And
can't
you just feel bad from that.
take a day and relax and do something like that, but to
Right.
do
It's
that
not like
all
those
the
are
time,
bad things to do. It's
no.
that if you're using that to cope with those feelings, that's not going to, it's not a win. It's a loss. You're going to lose
No.
out because it's just going to make it worse.
Like we said, you're only masking it. It's like
Yeah.
you're putting a Band-Aid on a giant open wound.
Yeah. So I guess what I wanted to talk to you about today is how do we actually, or how should we actually react? Because
Right.
I know
Some
you've got some
strategies for that.
solutions and some strategies for us from the Bible. And they actually fit perfectly with acceptance and commitment therapy, which is the stuff I'm working on in my work in grad school. And
Right. And sometimes we have this idea that that the Bible and I guess I don't know technically psychology, right? The behavioral
yeah, we
therapy
call it
and
behavior science usually because
yeah, okay.
psychology is a little bit
So,
more
but
like
sometimes we think that,
inward.
well, the Bible and science, they're kind of opposites, but science has always been the study of God's creation.
Right. So if you're
And
doing real science that's based on
right,
observation of nature, it should
right.
perfectly align with scripture. And that's, I think, why behavioral psych
The
does.
problem is things that are technically forensic science, like
Mhm.
the study of origins, have become synonymous with science, and we think of
Right.
those as science, but they're really more of a different category because you can't repeat any of those theories. You can't test them. You can't,
Hmm.
see if
Yeah.
they work
Whereas
in
in
real
my
life.
field, I can record the number of times a certain behavior occurs, and I can record what happened before it and what happened after it, and then you can find out what's causing that behavior, and you can make some sort of intervention to change what happened before or after it, to change the behavior and help the individual. Like, that's totally just observing what's real in real life, and that's the whole foundation for what we're doing.
But anyway, I'm sure we could
Anyways,
talk forever.
I could talk about that forever. Let's see, what's next on our notes here? We should talk about how to react to depression. That's, I think, what I think we should probably get to next. And those spiritual strategies, because we know you can't just magically end depression, or to the lesser extent that, like, we're feeling down. There's no, like, snap and make that go away.
And we know, just from history and even from the Bible, there's believers, strong Christians that have had this struggle all their life, and it's just something we have to work through.
David was very, very depressed. Elijah was depressed. King Solomon was depressed. Sure. Was it Paul you were telling me the other day?
Yeah, Paul and some of the apostles. There's some indications in Acts and some of the epistles that there was a season of depression there.
Right. There's a lot of times when these guys face that, and they came out of it using God's way. And
if you read the Psalms, a lot of the Psalms start out sounding very depressed. God, why are you so far from me? Why
Psalm 73 is one of my favorite ones, where the guy's like, I've been doing right, but all the bad guys are winning. This is so not fair. And then he comes to the end and he's like, oh yeah, this is why.
And some people see that as a contradiction, that, he's not trusting God. And then at the end he talks about God, but it's just real life. We feel that way, and he's just expressing how he feels, that he feels like God's so far from him, and that everything's crashing around him. And then he begins to think and realize.
Right. When I went to the sanctuary of the Lord and I saw their end, he realizes once he focuses on the right things, it fixes them. So, anyways, let's get to it. The framework we're going to talk about all these scriptures today is the acceptance and commitment therapy framework. These aren't like the exact steps of a full-blown therapy session, but it's like the basics, and it worked really well to organize our thoughts. So, Aaron, the first step for acceptance and commitment therapy would be acceptance. Okay, so basically the first step you want to take when you're trying to deal with the feeling down is you need to recognize and accept the fact that life is basically going to have problems, and it's really normal for things to be going badly, and it's normal for you to feel badly. In fact, it's totally fine and totally just part of you being a human being that you're going to have times where you feel really down. And whatever specific problems are going on in your life that you feel bad about, you're going to feel bad about that. And that's the right feeling to have. Like, Aaron, I think we talked before, when I was 16, my 16th birthday was spent at the funeral and burial of my grandmother. Okay. Like, that was not a great day. My worst birthday of all time. Okay. But all of those feelings I was feeling then were correct. Like, they were appropriate to my scenario, because I was a 16-year-old on my birthday where my grandmother had died, and we had the funeral on her birthday, right? You would be feeling terrible, and that's the right feeling to have, and that's okay. So the first step is recognizing that it's normal for bad feelings to be there. So that's like the psych side. So go ahead and expand on that.
Yeah, well, just from a biblical perspective, acceptance, it's a biblical concept. When you talk about the gospel and salvation, we all have to understand that and accept the fact that we're sinners. Right. And something you and I like to refer to as the Genesis test.
Oh yeah, right.
That goes back to the Garden of Eden. And if I could real quick, just
go ahead.
Read a couple verses here to just illustrate what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Genesis 2:15 through 17. It says, "And the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die." Mm-hmm. So, and the reason we call this the Genesis test is because the question is, well, if God made man, and he made man without sin, and why did sin come into the world, and why did God put
Yeah.
this one tree in the garden that Adam and Eve
Right. Yeah. Because I mean,
eat of?
he could have just left them, right? Why did he
Right.
have to do that?
And that comes back to, what is our purpose here on this earth? Everything that is made has a purpose, and our purpose
Right.
is to glorify the one who made us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And but to really fulfill that purpose, and it comes down as well to God's love for his creation, that um, true love and true glorifying of God isn't going to happen unless it's our choice to do so. And
Yeah.
so God
Yeah.
could
You have
have,
to be choosing God for sure.
right. And so the thing is that God made a choice. He put the tree there, and that was their choice. Either choose God, choose me, or
Hmm.
choose yourself, choose to eat of this tree. And so that's what
Yeah.
they
Oh, and
did.
I'd add they could also choose to follow Satan's way, which
Right.
was right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, so if our purpose is to glorify God, and we glorify God by choosing Him, and that's,
Hmm.
they didn't do that. So,
Right. Yeah.
how do I get
Which is the
to
problem.
acceptance here? Right. So, to bring this back to acceptance, we all have to understand that since Adam and Eve made that choice, that each one of us is born with sin, and
Hmm.
sin is it's breaking God's law, and
Right.
if you look at God's law, and
And by
God's
law,
standard is perfection.
you don't mean like the Abrahamic covenant laws.
No.
You mean
No,
like
I mean,
God's way of living and interacting in the world
right,
outlined in the Bible.
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
in case people aren't sure what we're
No.
trying to say.
No. So, and it comes down then to, we need to accept our state where we are. We need to accept
Hmm.
that I am a sinner.
Yeah, it's
And
a
look
sinful
around in this
world.
world. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
everything's a
can't look
mess.
around. It is a mess.
It would be really weird if everything was going great in a world filled with sin and evil.
Right. And if
Yeah,
this was a perfect world, we wouldn't be having this discussion about how to
right.
deal with depression.
Right.
So,
This wouldn't be a problem.
no. So, but it's not a perfect world, and each of
Yeah,
us need to come to the point where we realize and accept that we're sinners, and that we need God, and
yeah,
need to
that's really good.
choose. Like, and that's the thing. God gives us a choice.
Hmm.
People talk about, well, how can a good God send people to hell? No, God presents us with a choice. Either you
Right.
choose me, or you choose away from me. You choose your flesh, and God respects our choice, and that's what it's all about, is our choice. So, anyway, um, from there, then we come to uh, something that you and I refer to as the Ecclesiastes problem.
Right.
And you mentioned Solomon, who we believe to be the author of Ecclesiastes. He
Oh, come on. We know he did it. You know he
I,
wrote it.
there is some discussion on it, but
Okay,
really,
fine. He
it's
super wrote it, Aaron.
yeah, he did.
He did.
To me, it's pretty plain that he wrote it.
Yeah,
So,
come on. We
anyway,
don't have to apologize to anybody. We
um,
know what happened.
so Solomon, we know him to be the wisest man, and
Right.
yet he made a lot of horrible decisions. And we also know, if you've ever read the book of Ecclesiastes, there is no questioning that man was depressed.
Right. Right.
And
And
the reason for his depression was that he came to realize that meaning and purpose cannot be found apart from God.
right, because he looked in at everything there was to do. I mean, he basically had all the money that there was to have and all the power that there was to have, and got to try literally everything there was to try with everyone and everything that there
Yeah,
was to do.
every pleasure, every job. He had all the money in
And
the world. He
right,
had all the wisdom
significance,
in the world.
status, he had it all, and he recognized that essentially at some point he would die and it would all have just been gone and meaningless, and there was nothing he could do that could last. Like,
Right.
if you even think 6,000 years from now, what's going to be left of you? Like, nothing will be left here on this planet that reflects you. So
Nope. But now, just let me read a little bit of what he wrote to
sure.
illustrate what we're talking about. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
Ecclesiastes 1:2-8, he says, "Vanity of vanities," which is something he uses a lot in this book. "Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit hath a man of all his labor which he taketh under the sun? One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh. But the earth abideth forever. The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to his place where he arose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. All things are full of labor, man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. And what he's describing here is that in all the world, and he says, makes the phrase under the sun. So he's talking specifically about the physical world.
Right.
He's not talking about spiritual things in eternity. He's saying if there isn't an eternity, if there isn't more to life than what's in the physical, then there is no meaning. That it's all
Right.
vanity. The sun rises, the sun sets, the seasons go on, and time goes on, and it doesn't change anything. And in the last phrase, he talks about men. All things are full of labor. we work all our lives.
Mm-hmm.
You go to work, you come home, you go to bed, you get up, you do it again
Right.
the next day. And the eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. You just can't
Yeah.
get enough. We always want more.
And he's basically putting out there the idea of nihilism, that there is no meaning to life. There's nothing
Right.
worth anything. It's all just a ride through until you die, which is actually a
And
really popular thought by a lot of people right now.
and I
But
would
it's
say
wrong.
I would say to the nihilist, and it might surprise you what I say, but I'm going to say,
Okay.
yeah, you're right. There is
Yeah. Oh,
no,
yeah. No, I totally agree.
there's
You're right. There is no
absolutely
purpose and meaning here. There's nothing.
without
Yep. Go
the
ahead.
eternal. If
Right.
all there is, if you're going to live and do what you do, and you die, and 1,000 years later nobody's ever going to know who you are, what's the point? There is no point.
Right. Well, and that's what Solomon identifies there in Ecclesiastes.
Right.
There's no meaning or purpose to be found here. And I'm getting ahead of you because I know the verses you're bringing up. But the point from that is that to have something meaningful that we're doing here, we have to have something of eternal value.
All right, so
So go
you
ahead.
led
I
in
don't,
perfectly to
I
my
don't want to
next
steal your
verse.
thunder.
Ecclesiastes, the end of the book, Solomon comes to the conclusion, and the whole book is him showing and proving how he pursued this to show in his own life there's no meaning and purpose, there's no true joy found in anything in this life. But in Ecclesiastes 12, 13, and 14, he says, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. So this is what the conclusion he
Mm-hmm.
came to. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man.
Right.
For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. And now, fear God to us, you want me to be afraid of God? No. The
Mm-hmm.
word
Yeah.
fear there actually more literally means reverence.
Sure. Yep.
To have now reverence has fear mingled with it, along with awe and adoration.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's not so much a fear as it is a reverence for God. And this comes back then to what we were talking about, to choosing God. Now I know to some that might be going, so what does this have to do with depression?
We'll get to it.
We're getting there. We just have to build up to it, okay?
Got to
So
explain the background so the rest makes sense. Stick with us. Don't turn that dial, kids.
so and that's, but Solomon did deal with depression and realized that nothing in this life is going to bring purpose and meaning, and that so many people try to find purpose in
Yeah.
their job, in their family, in riches, in wealth, in
Right.
whatever it is, or maybe even in doing things for other people. And in the long run, none of it is going to fulfill that sense of purpose that we have.
Right. And that gets to my step 2 for ACT, is that you need to commit to a goal or a purpose that's in line with your values.
Right.
And it's an overarching goal that's going to guide your life, and specifically one that's meaningful to you. So you got to find a meaningful goal to commit your actions towards. So then that would be, in our case, we'd be, if we're trusting the Bible here, which I think we should, and trusting King Solomon, who analyzed this already for us, that committed action needs to be something of eternal value.
Right.
So something that will last beyond us here and now in this world. So the question I would have would be, and the question anyone out there should ask themselves, what is my goal? What am I striving towards here in the world?
Right. And
Why am I here?
just
What am I going to do
let me
with
say
me?
real quick, our target audience that we're trying to reach here is specifically believers. But this is
Right.
something that is true for all of us, whether you believe in God or not. And
Well,
uh,
even believers, Aaron, I mean, it's sad to say, but let's be honest. Most believers, if you break down, you ask them their priorities, they say, well, God's first, then my family, and then my community, or something like that. Reality for most people is myself is first, maybe my family is second, and probably work is third.
right,
Okay.
it's like
Like that's
Paul
most
says,
people's
I
real
know what I
priority
should do.
list.
Yeah, Paul says, I know what I should do, but I'm not doing what I know that I want to do.
So the
And
first step, sit down and figure out, okay, is that what's really important to me? What really is actually important to me, and what should be important to me, and how can I commit to that? Well, it's not how can I, it's you do make a commitment to go towards that goal.
right, and the therapy you're talking about, you have to find something that brings you purpose. And as we're talking
Right.
about, anything in this life ultimately isn't going to
Right.
fulfill
It's got to be
that
internal
need
or
for
else it'll be
purpose.
pointless.
Right. And
Yeah.
so we come to what you and I call the Philippians proposition.
Right.
If you come to the book of Philippians, one of the main themes that you find in Philippians is everybody talks about how Philippians is all about joy. And joy comes up
Hmm.
so many times in the book of Philippians that it's a book about joy. It is, but maybe not
Okay.
in the way that a lot of people think.
Okay. How is it
And
then?
so let me just caveat that a little bit. In Christian circles, we almost have this view that joy is just this kind of almost a mystical, magical thing that just happens. If you're a Christian, then
Yeah.
you
Like
should
if you're
just have
spiritual, then.
right. You should just
Right.
have joy. And the fact of the matter is, it doesn't just come out of nowhere. And
Hmm.
so that leaves a lot of believers going, I know that I'm supposed to be joyful, but I'm not. I'm depressed. So either I'm not really a Christian, or I'm not doing something right,
Right. Or
or
worse, they just end up faking it. And they're like,
right.
well,
And
I'm
that's what a
supposed to
lot of
be
Christians,
joyful, so
yeah.
and you get that
Yeah,
fake
yeah.
like
And
I'm
you get
happy
that.
all the time, but
It,
inside I'm dying.
yeah,
And
and
it's
that's
not
where you
great.
get a lot of people
Not
at,
good for you.
maybe at church as a pastor. And let me just say, if you're a churchgoer and you're a believer and you go to church, um, your pastor probably knows better whether or not you're faking it than you might think.
Oh yeah, that's true. And also too, Aaron, just from the stats, 20% of the church is depressed. Okay, like the stats are from a sampled population of about 10,000 people in the study that I pulled for us today, and that's cross-sectional. Okay, so even in the church, you got 20% of the people who are dealing with some level of depression, uh, from very low level, just I'm kind of feeling down, to all the way down to severe suicidal depression that needs medication and needs intensive therapy. So you're going to have that spectrum, but at the very least 20%, and it's probably higher right now because of the extra environmental factors with, the quarantine and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
and like I said, joy. That well, believers should just be joyful. So just be joyful, and we talk about things that can steal your joy, like it's this magical thing inside of us that
Hmm.
if you're a believer, you have joy, and if you're not joyful, then you're doing something wrong, and or you're sinning, or you're not really a
Right.
believer.
Yeah.
It just comes out of nowhere, and that's not really what Philippians teaches. And
Yeah.
that's why I say I think it's a little bit different. Yes, Philippians talks about joy, but it's more joy through purpose. If you
Okay.
look at, joy
Can you
comes up a
explain that?
lot in the book. Yeah. So in Philippians, um, Paul is making the case that it's more than just about joy. So what I mean is, as a believer, our goal isn't joy. Our goal is to glorify God, right? To
Okay. Yeah,
fulfill our
definitely.
purpose,
Right.
and each of us is given a mission. So let me just read some of the verses here. And I keep saying this is what Paul said. Let me show you what he said.
All
So
right, go ahead.
just in the first chapter, I think this can really sum up the whole book. The rest of the book is just adding on to this.
Okay, go ahead.
So Philippians 1, 3 through 7. I thank God upon every remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine for you all, making request with joy. So there it is, for your
Mhm.
fellowship in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this very thing, that he which hath begun a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. Even as it is meet for me to think this of you all, because I have you in my heart, inasmuch both in my bonds and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel, ye all are partakers of my grace. So he talks about the joy, and he's always praying for them and praying that they will have joy. And then he goes on and says, he's confident of this thing, that God, who's begun a good work in you, he will perform it. But then you get to the end of this passage here,
Mhm.
and he says, um, because verse 7, inasmuch as both in my bonds and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel. And just as you see joy a lot in this book, it always comes back to the gospel. And his
Okay.
point is here, if we are working towards a specific goal, which is our mission, right? As believers,
Mhm.
our
Right.
mission is to tell others about Christ,
Yeah.
is the gospel. And if we have a mission, and if we have something that we're working towards to fulfill our purpose, that joy is something that is going to come out of that.
Right. And it's not like a happy slappy dappy joy. It's like
No,
a satisfaction in fulfilling that and working towards that purpose.
right.
Yeah. That
It's
makes
it's
sense to
it's
me.
kind of the idea that you can endure anything as long as you see the light at the end of the tunnel, as long as you have something, a goal
Yeah.
that you're working towards.
Right.
And it's one of those things that, rather than focusing on I need to be joyful, if you focus on what am I doing for God, two things happen there. My focus is no longer on me and my
Mhm.
horrible situation. My focus is on how am I glorifying God and how am I helping other people.
Yeah.
I'm no longer focused on me and how rotten and crummy I feel. I'm focused on other people,
Mhm.
and the feelings about me, they don't matter as much because I'm too busy doing
Right.
something else.
And there's a satisfaction to be had there too from
Sure.
living your life in a way that is meaningful and fulfilling a meaningful purpose. So even from just the pure psychology side, having that goal in your life that you're striving towards and that you're actively working towards gives you that thing that you're doing that is relevant and meaningful,
Right. And I,
which
and I have a lot of other
overcomes.
verses in the book of Philippians and in Philippians
Yeah,
1, but I
just
think
everyone
maybe,
go read all of Philippians. It's
right,
not too
right.
long. It's only 4
For sake
chapters.
of
You're
time, I
bored.
think
Do
maybe
it.
I won't even go into all the verses I was looking at even in chapter 1. But just chapter 1,
Yeah.
just mark how many times Paul talks about the gospel and working together or in fellowship for the gospel. But I think where the point where it really comes down to, and I think this is the key to the whole book of Philippians.
Okay.
So Philippians 1:25 says, "In having this confidence, I know that I shall abide and continue with you all for your furtherance and joy of faith, that your rejoicing," so there's the joy, "your
Hmm.
rejoicing may be more abundant in Jesus Christ." So our rejoicing
Mm.
is in Jesus Christ for me by coming to you again. And here's the key.
Okay.
Verse 27, "Only let your conversation," now conversation isn't meaning like you and I having a conversation
Right.
here.
It's
It's
like your
meaning,
walk, how you
right,
interact
your
in the world.
lifestyle, the
Yeah.
the
Got
way
it.
in which
Okay.
you live your life.
Yeah.
You might call this behavior.
I probably would.
So only let your conversation, your behavior, your lifestyle be as it becometh the gospel of Christ. So there it is, the point. Our life is to be about the gospel of Christ, that whether I come and see you or else be absent, I may hear of your affairs. And then here it is, that ye stand fast in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel.
Right, and
So
that's
the
your
point,
church mission statement, right?
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Striving together for the faith of the gospel. That was our theme for the year last year. This year, our theme is living the life of ministry. But
Hmm.
again, still focused on striving together for the faith of the gospel. And so, two things there. First, striving means work.
Yeah.
This is something that's going to take work, and it's not something that just happens in one day, but we're working towards the gospel and bringing the gospel to others and showing others the love of Christ. But it
Hmm.
says striving together.
Right.
So that's one of the things about depression is you feel like you're totally alone. Even if you're surrounded by people, you feel like you're alone. And we're striving together. So that means that I, with you, and with others, this really comes to it. And here I'm a pastor, so I have to bring this out. But this is what the Bible says:
Hmm.
we strive together as a team in our local church.
Yeah. And that's kind of hard for some people too right now, because a lot of people aren't able to make it out. And
Right.
so that could
So
be a reason too why some people are having a harder time now that
because how
wouldn't.
do you work together with your church if you can't meet?
Right. So
Some
that's
are
kind
able
of
to
tough.
do online meetings like you and I are doing right now.
Yeah. But you know
Some are
what?
not.
This is a good segue to my next step. So if we can, step
Sure.
3 is to plan specific actions that are going to meet your goal, that you can start right now and are meaningful to you and are something that you can actually do.
Right.
So for instance, like, don't think I'm going to start the next great awakening during the quarantine from my living room on my
Right.
cell phone. No, that's not possible. It's not happening.
No.
You're not going to be able to get that done. Uh, and especially if you're feeling down, you're not going to feel like doing anything. So you need something that you can actually do. And maybe all you can do today is send somebody a positive text or something. But if that's
Right.
your committed action today, I'm going to text 3 people a smiley face emoji to encourage them. Like, maybe that's all you can do because you're feeling that down. I hope not. I hope nobody's that. But it's probable that somebody out there is that bad. And if that's all
Right.
you got in you today, that's your list. That's what
Yeah.
you're going to do today.
Exactly. And you've fulfilled your purpose that day.
Right, because
And
if your purpose is you're working for choosing God and God's way, and you're going to choose to take what action you can to further God's plan and God's way, maybe that just means for you today, you're so down that all you can do is text somebody a smiley face.
right.
Okay. Hey, maybe you're not
Right.
that bad. Maybe it's, your phone. And I don't want it to all be just calling somebody. Aaron, maybe you can give me some better
Yeah,
examples.
I have some thoughts.
But, make yourself a list of things that you can do that would be meaningful to do. Like, honestly, for me, putting this video together is something that I thought would be meaningful to do. It's been on my list. So we've been working to put it together. That's a
Right.
meaningful thing for us. So what's meaningful for you guys who are watching, or for you, Pastor Aaron, and something that can be done in quarantine? You can't go have a big party for all your friends right now unless,
No.
you're going to just do that. I
Right.
guess you can.
And
But
and let me just say, if so, let's assume that you in the audience there you're a believer, and you understand. Okay, my purpose is to glorify God. I want to glorify God, and I do that by choosing Him. And my mission then to glorify God is to tell others about the gospel. So some might think that as, well, that means that I have to be witnessing, and if I'm not witnessing, then I'm
Mhm.
not striving for the gospel. But
Yeah.
it's more than just the gospel. It's about ministering to the needs of others. Remember, Jesus did minister to the spiritual needs of people, but He met their physical needs first. And so it's about ministering to the needs of people and showing the love of
Right.
Christ. And sometimes you're going to give the full-blown gospel to somebody when they're ready to hear it. But sometimes all you're going to do is give them a
Yeah.
smile
Hey,
and just say, "Hey, you know what? It'll be okay."
and Aaron, we're in lockdown, right? Like basically no one can leave their house. So, I mean, maybe it's just ministering to your own family.
Yeah.
Who
So
knows?
just let me I just a few ideas, some practical ways that you as
Yeah.
a believer could strive and could do this and fulfill our mission and purpose. And first is I'm assuming that you're a member of a local church,
Yes, I
and
am.
um,
I know you knew
I know that you.
that.
So hopefully that you are, and in that, then you have a support group. There are people that you can talk to and text and things. But one thing, and I always tell people this, I always, well, how I don't know what to do to minister and serve. I don't. There's nothing that I can do in my church, and I always ask people, have you asked your pastor?
That's a good point.
Have you asked your pastor if there's something you could do to help?
Yeah.
Odds are he has a list. I have a list.
Hey, and just for all those pastors out there, start with tithing. Do that. That's just
Sure.
honestly, I know everybody's hurting out there, but also the churches are hurting too, and we got to remember to take care of our churches. That's not in our show notes at all, but it's important. I mean, come on, your
Yeah,
church
it
has
is.
its bills. They don't go away just because the
Well, and make sure daily you're in the Word. Where I guess we're assuming these things that you're in the Word, that you're giving to the church still, you're doing these things,
hmm
and beyond that, so find something that gives you purpose. Your
right,
ministry, your ministry is
right,
how you're going to serve God. And we think of there's this stigma that ministry means you need to be up in the pulpit preaching. No, it
right.
doesn't.
Like,
No, it doesn't. I
yeah,
tell you what, in my church, I mean, there's people that all they do in the church, their ministry is they clean the bathrooms.
and Aaron, you know this better, and I worked on a church staff for a while, but you know this better even than I do. That if the only person doing work in the church was a pastor, you're done. You don't have
And
you don't
and
have
I know of a church where there's they have um, people that help when others come forward and need counseling.
hmm
They have people that give counseling, and I know that there's a person that doesn't feel qualified to give counseling, but
yeah,
they want to help in that way. So they're the one that holds the pamphlets for the counselors.
yeah,
That's their ministry, and they do it faithfully every single Sunday.
right, and that's meaningful because it's
Right.
meaningful to
That's
God.
meaningful.
And
Right.
so,
And
no,
and
so
and
Aaron, if I can, you have one more thing here.
yeah, I have one more thing I
Okay,
wanted
go
to
ahead.
say. Ministry begins on Monday. So ministry is not just about what I do at church, it's what I do through the week. So I said I'd give some practical things, and I haven't done
Yeah.
so yet. So some practical things we can do. Talk to your pastor.
Yeah, like okay,
Find out if
so
there's something
Aaron,
he could
if
do,
I
have
if
you
I
do.
let's say I was at your church in South Dakota instead of over here in Michigan, and I came to you and I said, Pastor Aaron, I really feel like I need to be doing something to help me live meaningfully for God. What can I do to help the church right now? What's something
Well,
I
I
can do for
know, there's a few things, but one thing for me is every week I'm trying to call and talk to every single person in the church to just catch up with people and see how everyone's doing.
you? Hmm
And truthfully, yes, I don't have services at the church on Sunday, but I have a lot that I'm doing through the week,
Right.
and I'm not able to get to everybody. I'm
And I
just
keep
not.
calling
And
you and
that would
bugging you.
help me a lot if somebody would say, "Hey, I'd love to, just give me a list of people to call each
Okay.
week, and I'll give them a call." There's people quarantine, you can't go and talk to them, but there's some older people in the church that can't get out of, haven't been able to get out of the house for years, and they're just so lonely. They could use somebody to talk to. You give them a call, and they'll talk to
hmm
you for an hour.
Yeah.
you know, things like that. But the other thing is, if you want to know how to minister, find something that you love to do, find something that you're good at.
hmm
Don't feel like you have to try and do something that
Right.
you're not good at. If you're not good at cooking and making meals for other people, don't use that as your ministry. Do
don't
something else
don't
as your
start cooking
ministry.
garbage food.
Maybe you're good at music and you like to play the piano. I've seen on Facebook a lot of people recording videos just of their hands playing the piano. So a
Hmm.
lot of people don't
Or
want a
you and your
video of
wife
them.
just did one, right? Where she
Right.
played the piano. Yeah, that was nice.
And play the piano. And I tell you, I've been watching some of those videos, and it's just such an encouragement to me
Yeah.
to hear some of those hymns, and I'm singing along a little bit, and things like that. Or maybe I like to do some woodworking. So I like to. The thing is, for me, I like to do little craft projects. I make signs. I've been making some wooden toys and stuff. But it's pointless to me to do it if I don't have somebody to give it to, or something to do it for. I don't
Hmm.
want to sell stuff. That's not me.
Yeah.
So I make things so that I can give to somebody else and be an encouragement to them.
Hmm.
As simple as that. I know people that my wife, she loves to make cards. You see in the background, she's quite the
Yeah, she got
crafter,
that nice craft room set up out
coloring and
there.
crafting and stuff. And she started a few years ago making cards for every single person in the church on their birthday and
Oh,
their
that's nice.
anniversary, and really intricate homemade cards. And the people in the church just love it. They look forward to it on their birthday and anniversary. And so, maybe you could
So
do
you're
some things
telling
like
me
that.
that even something like making nice cards for people, that has eternal value.
Yep, absolutely. Everything that we do can have eternal value if we're doing it to minister to somebody else and doing it for the glory of God.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. It's there's a verse I'm thinking about this. Come on, Aaron, help me out here. Uh and whatsoever you do in word or deed, do all to the glory of God.
Yep, yep. Colossians 1:26 or 7 or something like that.
That's why you're ordained and I'm still a student. That's good. That's good. Well,
Or sorry, Colossians 3, not 1.
oh, okay, okay. I'm just trusting you
uh,
here. I don't know. I just have it memorized. I
Colossians
don't know the
3.
reference. So then, yeah, and you know what too would be nice, if people are watching this, leave your ideas in the comments of what you could do to
Yeah,
be
absolutely.
helpful. Like, give some people ideas, and let's encourage
And
each other by
one
coming
thing
up
I know
with.
a lot of people are doing right now is making face masks. People
Yeah,
like to sew, make masks.
right. And that can be, if that's meaningful, that's something that you can do. And
Yeah, find out maybe from your local hospital, or just other people that need masks or things like that, and
yeah,
you can be making some of those things.
yeah. And I know even
Um,
some churches are organizing things to
yeah,
do that.
but
So talk to your pastor. He might.
yeah, exactly. And we could go on and on and on a list, but if there's something
Yeah.
you like to do, there's something you're good at, find a way to use that to minister to other
Right.
people.
And throw that idea in the comments in case people have a hard time coming up with things. And then, for the sake of time, which is short, step 4 on our list here is to act out your plan. So this is like the first part's all preparing. Now that you know what your goals are and they are meaningful, and you know what your committed plan of action is, and that's meaningful to you, now you actually go out and do it. So you written it down, or you thought it up and you remember it in your head. Now you start, go do it, take actual action. And like I said, maybe it's all you can do to just pick up your phone and text somebody. But if that's your list, that's what you do.
And make it an achievable goal.
Absolutely. If you can't actually, if it's not achievable, if it's too much for you, like if making a phone call is too much for you, and when you're depressed, especially if the depression is very strong, it can be too much to
Yeah,
literally reach over, pick up your phone and call someone. So
yeah,
it can be, and that's okay. If all you can do is stop and pray, maybe that's the most you got in you. That's fine. Do
yep,
that.
yep.
Take that action. And then I'm gonna skip ahead for a time here, Aaron, to step 5, which is get help to keep your plan in motion. So basically, tell somebody what you're planning to do, and that way it helps cement it for you that you are actually committed to it, because you have some accountability.
Right.
Um, and it can help if you find a specific person to help keep you
Which is why
accountable.
you have me helping you make this video.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. It
To
does.
help you with your action plan.
Yeah, because it'd be too easy for me to just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make a video, and then it just sits on my Google Drive as an outline for 100 years until I never do it. So, um, lastly, I do want to add here too, this whole concept of doing this whole action plan thing, it's not like a cure for depression. Like it
No.
doesn't cure depression. If you've got depression, like nothing really cures depression. Okay. That's just not how depression works. But it can make it not really matter because you have more important things to do.
Right.
And even if your action plan starts small and you're able to accomplish those things, add to it, make it grow until you're doing more and more. And,
Like we
make
said,
it
you can
meaningful.
endure a lot of pain if you know there's a reason and a purpose to it.
Right. And you can endure
It's
depression too
like
if you've got something important to do.
the Bible talks about enduring the pain of childbirth. The pain of childbirth is something that can be endured because you know of what comes, a new life
Also, an
comes out of it.
epidural helps.
Yeah.
Or so my wife says. I mean, I've never personally experienced this, but hey, Aaron, we are totally out of time here today, so we got to close out. But I know we'll both probably be watching the comments if anybody has any questions or needs any further help. Once again, if you are suffering severe depression, see an actual clinician because this is not medical advice. This
No.
is just us talking. And let's see, anything else we got to say here before we go, Pastor Aaron?
And if you really are struggling, like you said, see someone for medical help, and also if you're dealing with some spiritual things, talk to your pastor. He would
Yeah.
love to hear from you and to be able to help you.
Right. And if you're just feeling down, try it out. Try sitting down. What's your goals? Make sure that they really are eternal and make a committed action plan and do it. And
Yep. Make it small. Just one
yeah,
thing
something
for that
doable.
day that you're going to do. Don't
Yeah,
decide, you want to make intricate cards for 200 people in the next week.
that's not happening.
Yeah, I'm going to make one card for one person today.
And maybe this
That
week
kind of
even.
thing.
It could be that
Yeah,
day. I mean, who
yeah, or
knows how
maybe
bad
this
you're
week.
feeling?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
if you're feeling good, hey, maybe it's I'm gonna make, a card and see what and update after your card's done and see how it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, let us know how it's going. And if you have further questions on it, we have so much more to say. This is 1,000 times longer than I thought it would.
Yeah.
But we did talk about all the important stuff, so that's good. And hopefully you're able to stick with us through to the end. That's all I've got. Pastor Aaron, you got anything else for us?
Well, just know as it said we read already in the beginning of Philippians that it says there that God who has begun a good work in you, that he will finish it and he will complete it. And understand that all of these things are possible with the power and strength that we find in God. And so whatever your issue is, bathe it in prayer and seek God, and he will help you. He's not going to leave you alone in it.
That sounds great. All right, folks, thanks for
That's all I
watching.
got.
Thank you. Thanks, Aaron. And Soli Deo Gloria.